years to fight COVID-19. The amount nearly matches the WHO's budget last year and more than compensates for the $400 million paid yearly by the US, which President Donald Trump suspended last month. Well, Mr. Xi also offered to share a vaccine with the world when it becomes available in China, and he vowed to work with the UN to set up a global humanitarian response hub in China and ensure the flow of anti-epidemic supplies. Well, our correspondent Olivia Strong has more on President Xi's approval of the global review, which comes after weeks of strong opposition by Beijing.
Well, we have to know that President Xi was making his speech at the World Health Assembly at a time where China has faced increasing international pressure in recent weeks. Also, as that EU-backed resolution has really gained momentum, that resolution calling for an independent evaluation of the WHO's coordinated response to the pandemic, including among countries that have enjoyed close ties with China. We're talking about the likes of Russia and Indonesia. But we do have to note, having said that President Xi in his speech did not make specific reference to this EU-backed resolution. But what he said in his speech was that China supports the idea of a comprehensive review of the global response to COVID-19. And Mr. Xi stressed that this review should be done only after the pandemic is over, and that it should be led by the World Health Organization, and that it should be impartial and objective. Now, the Foreign Ministry has maintained that China's position has been consistent as well.
目前的决议案文呼吁各成员国采取必要措施，防止歧视、污名化、打击错误虚假信息，在研发诊断工具、诊疗方法、药物及疫苗、病毒动物源头等领域加强合作，并适时对世卫组织应对疫情工作进行评估。这些均符合中方立场。
Well, China has previously said that it opposes any sort of investigation into the origins or, into its handling of the coronavirus outbreak. Especially, it has been angered by these calls made by Australia and the US, which have also accused China of a cover-up and of mishandling the situation. But China has also said that it does support the work of the WHO, and what it remains opposed to is the politicization of the pandemic.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo has ruled out an immediate easing of social distancing rules. And this comes as new infections surge. The cases in the country rose to more than 18,000 on Monday, while the death toll climbed to nearly 1,200, one of the highest among Asian nations. Our correspondent, Chani Bhavani, has more.
President Joko Widodo on Monday over teleconference firmly stating that there is no relaxation on the large-scale social restrictions that have been implemented. He said that the public should not be mistaken to think that the government has begun to relax these restrictions. So we know that the president has effectively ruled out any immediate easing of these restrictions, and he's also ordered officials to strictly enforce the travel ban as well during this period, which would normally have been the annual mass exodus period. This is so that authorities can monitor and control the flow of people making their way into cities and out of cities as well. And the president's emphasis comes amid furor erupting on social media over the lax attitude adopted by Indonesians with regards to the large-scale social restrictions. Many have openly flouted these measures, and netizens have taken to social media to vent their frustrations using the hashtag Indonesia Terserah, which means whatever Indonesia in English. Now, Jakarta is set to conclude its large-scale social restrictions on May 22nd. That's 2 days before Eid al-Fitr. However, authorities may likely be extending these restrictions beyond Eid so that authorities can order residents to stay at home and conduct the Eid prayers at home and avoid gatherings. Now, in terms of a plan for post-COVID-19 normalcy, Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs Erlangga Hartarto has said that Indonesia will assess its virus exit strategy on the basis of the health risk perception from region to region, and the economy will be reopened in phases.
Well, in Hong Council over the election of the chair of a House committee. Well, tensions also been rising over renewed protests with the recent easing of the lockdown restrictions, Julie.
Now, worries are the government's plan to introduce a bill over the national anthem, and Chinese state media saying the territory's schools have become lawless will provoke a further anger, with critics seeing the moves as Beijing's further encroachment into the territory's affairs.
Well, Chief Executive Carrie Lam is expected to be briefing the media, in fact, this hour. For what we can expect to hear from her today, Roland Lim joins us live from Hong Kong. Good morning, Roland. Mrs. Lam may well touch on security issues, given, of course, the violent protests lately and out of the Legislative Council, of course, which appears to be returning. How does her administration plan to deal with this, given, of course, the COVID-19 situation has not quite stabilized fully yet, but at least they've made good progress?
Yeah, the opposition has actually vowed to oppose the national anthem bill, and as they no longer have control of the House committee, a second reading and passage of the bill seems very likely next Wednesday. The Pan Democrats themselves admitted they have very little room to filibust in the full council meetings, and there have been now social media calls for protests to be held across the city next Wednesday when the second reading is held. Now, pro-democracy lawmakers are accusing, of course, the Legislative Council security staff of siding with the pro-government camp and using police-style tactics to subdue them during that chaotic House committee meeting on Monday. Democratic Party lawmaker, for example, Ted Hui, he was pinned down on the floor by electrical security staff during the melee. 3 members of the security staff forcibly holding him down on the ground. He said that many of the electrical security guards, now former policemen, describing their behavior as very excessive. He said that he had never been treated so forcefully before in Mexico and didn't understand why the security staff would need these police-style force to be subdued, to be used in the Legislative Council itself. Now, outside of Mexico, the police have also been successful in curbing protests from turning violent. Remember, thousands were deployed on May 1st when a mass rally threatened to take place here, despite a ban on public gatherings. We've also seen more than 200 people arrested and hundreds more issued on-the-spot fines for breaching social gathering rules because of COVID-19. Remember, thousands have gathered at shopping malls since the arrest of 15 opposition leaders in April, as well as a more assertive Beijing liaison office in charge of supervising Hong Kong affairs.
Yeah, and Roland, meanwhile, the city is still on guard when it comes to new cases of COVID-19. A report here is saying that Hong Kong may extend the safe distancing rules, although there has already been some easing. So what more can you tell us?
But reports say that despite the forced closure of some businesses, nightclubs, saunas, karaoke lounges still off limits, that may or may not be extended for another 2 weeks. But authorities are hoping to relax some restrictions on some activities and venues with conditions, of course. Religious gatherings, for example, would be allowed, they say, with restrictions like, for example, temperature checks and making sure that the devotees will actually be wearing masks throughout a particular religious ceremony. A leading microbiologist and advisor to the government, Professor K.Y. Yun, he's saying that it's okay to relax some restrictions, but the government should actually be boosting the number of COVID-19 tests in order to detect any invisible transmissions that may be in the community. The government is likely to be extending the ban of gatherings of more than 8 people for another 2 weeks, and that's until June 4th. The restriction really to stem the spread of the coronavirus, because currently there were, despite a 23-day run of no local cases, that was broken by a family of 3 recently, and the source of that transmission has yet to be discovered.
Roland, thank you for the latest there, and we'll look forward to seeing you a little bit later on in the show. We're getting back to Roland Lim in Hong Kong when Chief Executive Carrie Lam's weekly media briefing gets underway this morning, and make sure you stay tuned for that, and of course we'll get you all the highlights from that fresh here on CNN.
Turning to the weather now. Meanwhile, India is is bracing for a powerful storm that's due to hit its east coast on Wednesday. Concerns are that the super cyclone could further strain emergency services already stressed by the battle to contain the COVID-19. 5,000 new infections. That's the biggest single-day toll since the outbreak began, raising the total number of cases to over 100,000 with over 3,100 deaths. A super cyclone Amphan is on course to slam into the Indian states of West Bengal and Odisha before cutting a path north into Bangladesh. Now, the storm has been steadily growing in strength and intensifying into the equivalent of a Category 4 hurricane. That means it's packing winds in excess of 240 kilometers per hour. The super cyclone's path covers poor and densely populated areas with shaky infrastructure. Both India and Bangladesh have evacuated more than 2 million people from harm's way. Our correspondent India Punya tells us more.
India's east coast is no stranger to cyclones. In fact, exactly this time last year, when the country was in the middle of a general election, you had Cyclone Fani making landfall, in which over 60 people had died. But the timing couldn't have been worse, which is why Prime Minister Modi held that high-level meeting a short while back. It was attended by various officials of the Home Ministry as well as India's National Disaster Management Authority to take a look at the preparedness on the ground. The state of Odisha, which is directly in the path of this cyclone, will be the hardest hit, and they are planning to evacuate 1.1 million people, not only those who live along the coast of the state, but also in many quarantine and migrant shelters that have been housing all of those migrant laborers coming back home from different parts of the country. You've got advisories being issued to people, warning them to stay away from the coastline. Fishermen have been asked not to venture out into the sea as well. And the Prime Minister being told that 37 disaster response teams are on the ground and are prepared to carry out rescue operations all through Wednesday when this storm will make landfall.
All right, time for a short break. Still ahead on the show. Striking while the iron is hot. Biotech upstart Moderna is tapping the markets to raise funds for the manufacturing and distribution of its vaccine it's working on. Plus, the first rejig in Hong Kong's benchmark Hang Seng Index since 2006 to pave the way.